Reddit by Reddit recap. What's the strangest thing you've caught people doing in high school? Two girls in my high school tried to poison another girl by dumping a scoop of copper sulfate into her Slurpee, or slushy, whatever you call it, in the middle of class 2. They thought it would kill her right off the bat, but she took a sip, spit it out and screamed. Everyone saw, everyone knew, and the teacher was pissed. After the police came and all three girls left the classroom, he muttered seriously, "A chemistry lab, and they try and use copper sulfate." He sounded disappointed in their choice of chemical. The two girls did end up getting charged and expelled. The girl who was the victim left the school shortly after too. The monster shit. Junior year, someone took a shit in one of the men's bathrooms. It must have been at least 5 Keurig. But seriously, this shit was of such massive proportions that it physically could not be flushed, and was left there almost all day. News of the movement spread quickly, and they actually needed to put an assistant principal outside the bathroom, because kids from all over the school were trying to see it. Eventually they had a janitor shovel it out of the toilet and dispose of it. I feel bad for that janitor, and the anus that produced such a monstrosity. I worked at an inner city high school when I lived in Minneapolis. I remember once I had to sub for a choir class for just 1 hour. The teacher got into a car accident. I left the room for 10 minutes, and when I got back, probably 10 kids were smoking out the window and 3 pairs in heated makeout sessions. Somebody had hijacked the overhead projector and lesbian porn was playing for the class, and there was one lone white girl fucking studying. She was strange. Back in my country, I attended Catholic schools for most of my schooling. I went to an all-boys Catholic school for high school. During my freshman years there was a notorious scat bandit who left his handiwork on the walls. Some students and teachers complained. The custodial staff were royally pissed as well. The principal called up some health officers who educated us about hygiene, etc. The whole thing was hilarious. Scat bandit upped the ante and left his stains all over campus. Principal was furious obviously, and a witch hunt was underway. One day, I took a bathroom break during religion class. I was at the urinal, about to do my business, when I hear some giggles and soft singing in the showers. Now the showers haven't been used since the 60s and my curiosity got the better of me. I tiptoed to the singing shower and peeked through the curtains. There was Ned, squatting. A pile of fresh dookie on the side of the shower and his fingers brown with filth. He was inscribing the words "Hello fuckers" on the shower tiles. I froze in horror. He must have heard my breathing and glanced over his shoulder. Our eyes locked for a good 20 seconds. I just couldn't move. He then raised his fingers and did a SHHHH with a wide grin. I walked back slowly, then ran outside and puked profusely. I never told anyone about Ned. He was a troubled kid who had issues. Back then, corporal punishment was enforced, and Ned got a fair share of it. A few months later he transferred out to another school, and that was the last I heard of Ned. I was a freshman, and was into maybe the second quarter of the school year. My English teacher was a pretty straight-edged, sarcastic, and sometimes humorless lady. One day, she announces to us from the front of the classroom that it was her birthday. One of the girls in my class freaks out overjoyed, gets up out of her seat, runs over to the teacher, and essentially starts twerking on her. No one laughed or knew what to do. Just silence as this goes on for a few moments. She eventually stopped. The teacher just told her to get out. The student got suspended for a day or 2. It was a bizarre experience. A bunch of folks at my high school had this obnoxious habit of hiding cream cheese in hard to reach places. Our school cafeteria would serve a breakfast meal every Friday morning, consisting of donuts and bagels. While these provisions were supposed to be for the middle schoolers who were touring the campus, which was kind of an experimental place, funded in part by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, there was almost always enough left over for all of regular students to eat their fill, as well. They would help themselves to whatever edibles they wanted, and a handful of people would make at times ridiculous efforts to abscond with as many single-use containers of cream cheese that they could. Once these heists had happened, the shenanigans would begin. First, the perpetrators would scour the school in search of likely locations for their mischief. After a decent place had been found, they'd open one of their cream cheese containers, squeeze it a little bit on the bottom, and then squish the entire thing against the wall, or the underside of a desk, or wherever. Left unchecked, these breakfast-based barnacles would quickly develop the consistency of concrete, making them nearly impossible to remove without some variety of specialized tool. Although the faculty remain largely unaware of the practice, this game of hiding cream cheese around the school developed into a weird kind of hidden war. One faction would do all that they could to leave their messes where they couldn't be found, while the other faction would attempt to seek out and remove the semi-edible cysts before they could take hold. Nobody kept score, at least, not as far as I ever knew, but there was always a campus-wide opinion about who was winning and who wasn't. For those of us who didn't take part in either activity, although, I confess, I once had fish throughout the school, it was rather like being caught in a bar between two opposing groups of sports fans. That school has grown quite a bit since I attended, both in size and student population. Much of it has been rebuilt, repainted, or otherwise altered in some way. Even so, the last time that I visited, I went and looked at one of the locations where a friend of mine had hidden his cream cheese. I didn't quite know how to feel when I saw that it was still there. There were two big mysteries everyone was trying to solve at my high school. The first was shortly after a science class got iPad minis with cameras. Within the first 2 weeks of us having them, someone had managed to take a dick pic in the middle of class with full lighting, implying they didn't do it under the table. The rest of the week was spent trying to match the dick with its owner. A female version of this happened too. Someone was looking at porn blogs on Twitter when they found a picture of some girl's boobs. What made them interested was that the girl was wearing one of our pair shirts in the picture. Like the above story, the titty mystery, or as I called it, the titstory, lit up Twitter, or you could say tit up Twitter, for the rest of the weekend. Neither culprit was ever found, but I really hope they found each other and started dating. Some kid I knew in high school told me he had been masturbating into a mason jar and saving his cum. He didn't specify why he was saving his cum, but anyway, his pet ferret had somehow gotten into the jar, and by the time he found out, the ferret's face was covered in semen. The thing that stood out to him, and what has painted a picture in my head since, was there was thick, pearl necklace connecting the jar to the ferret's nose when he found it. When I was in HS, the stoners in my class grew weed in the bushes behind an outdoor prayer and reflection area. Catholic school. There was a hollow saint statue in front of it that looked like it was praying. They popped out a chunk of his foot and would hide any processed or in-use product in the foot of the statue if faculty approached. I was always amazed that they didn't get caught, as the groundskeepers were meticulous about landscaping. Until one day I saw the maintenance guys exchanging goods with the stoners. The stoners had this all figured out. They would give the groundskeepers weed in exchange for them letting the tall plants around the weed go a little unkempt, so the pot plants wouldn't draw attention. They also kept 2 Gamma Boy colors in the statue, so they could play Pokemon. I visited the campus a few weeks ago, over a decade later, and pulled the foot out. Wouldn't you know, the Gamma Boy fired right up, and they had over 120 original Pokemon in their Pokédex. The cafeteria at my school had this fake plastic kale shit that they lined around the salad bar like it would make the food look appetizing or something. As if these things were like a foot long and green and wiggled around like a dildo. Actually, I've never touched a dildo, so I guess they wiggle around like how I assume a dildo does. Anyway, whenever I went through the line, I'd just take one and put it on my tray. It's not like I tried to hide it or anything. The lunch ladies either just didn't notice or didn't care. I ended up taking all of them and nobody noticed. I'd end up leaving them on the desks of my teachers, so each of my teachers would have like 4 or 5 on their desks, or randomly around their class. Eventually the school cop noticed me with one in my hand in the hallway, and he was like, what the hell, and made me tell the story, and he was like, well, it is technically stealing, I guess, and he made me go get them all back to the lunch line. The poor cop didn't know what to do with me, and I ended up walking through the halls carrying armfuls of fake plastic kale, and people were like, why the hell would this even be a thing? Ed already pulled a prank much more wide scale earlier in the year though, so most people thought I had been trying to pull another one, and were like, you go dude. A guy in the back of the classroom starts making weird noises, so everyone turns to look at him. It is very obvious the kid is having some serious problems breathing, so the nurse is called. By the time she gets there he's starting to go blue. He's known for liking his drugs, so the nurse is screaming at his friends, what did he take? You won't get in trouble, just tell me what he took. But they all just fucking stood there, out of sheer desperation, or maybe just checking to see if his throat was at all open. She just plunges her hand into his mouth, pauses, and yanks something out of his throat. Dude had swallowed a fucking morphine patch. Girl in my class liked to eat paper. You know when you rip a piece of paper out of a notebook and you're left with those scraps around the spiral? That was her favorite. She would also eat tissues. In 8th or 9th grade during gym class we found these two guys under the bleachers playing Yu-Gi-Oh nearly naked. When we asked what the hell they were doing, they said they were playing strip Yu-Gi-Oh. I've never seen a gym coach with such a pure look of disappointment. My Latin teacher was this really forgetful old man. Once, when we were in the middle of translating a paragraph, he suddenly left the room, and while he was out, two guys immediately jumped out of their seats. One pulled out a bag of bagels and started thumbtacking them all over the bulletin board, and the other guy turned off all the lights, turned on the TV, and put in the movie 300. When the teacher returned, he saw us all sitting there, earnestly watching 300, looked slightly confused, then sat down at his desk and started grading papers. He didn't notice the bagels until a week later. Best comment of the day. You may not read this because it's not Reddit, but I must say so everyone will see it. It wasn't in high school, but in middle school. It was my first year, and I had fun friends. I remember when I was at science class on the computer area, I was casually playing some game. Until there was a couple on my right and my friends on my left. I didn't have headphones, so I heard this girl secretly moaning at my right ear. It was so disturbing, but I ignored it. Minutes passed and it was getting really annoying, so I took a peek on what they were doing. Wanna guess? Yep. The boy was touching her inappropriately, that I almost saw her you know what, and saw he was hard. It was so disgusting, that I left the classroom and locked myself in the bathroom until the bell rang. Never saw them again, because they saw me peek and leave. Don't know what happened to them. P.S. I was in homeschool after that year. I even have more stories.